Good afternoon. In business news, despite BankservAfrica's economic transaction index showing some improvements in economic activity in December, a dramatic economic turnaround this year is not likely, and that's according to independent economist Elize Kruger, who joins us now to help make sense of that data. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So the understanding that I'm getting is that we should hold on to our horses. Elize, tell us about the data points as well as the headwinds that continue to plague the economy and restrict that economic activity.
Yes, good afternoon. Actually, we were quite thankful for a bit of an uptick in the betting in December. But, if you look at the broad economic environment, most of the factors that have been leading into this sort of a difficult 2023 will still be with us, especially in the first half of 2024. And therefore, we do not think that this uptick in December is necessarily the start of a sustainable trend. The BankservAfrica data, is measuring the overall value of transactions in the economy. So, indeed a good indication of where we are going. But if we look at the headwinds, we still have intermittent load shedding. That I think will continue into the new year. Hopefully, we will see some new capacity coming on stream during the course of the year. But where we are now, it's a status quo of load shedding. And then, at this point in time, we still have our elevated interest rates. We still have inflation at fairly high levels. So all of those in combination still remains a very difficult economic scenario as we start 2024.
And Elize, while we did see some industries, manage to remain resilient in 2023 through those headwinds that you mentioned, including load shedding, others, are running out of that steam, and that resilience will eventually run out across the board. What sectors are at risk?
Yes, indeed. I think, if we just think back about Q3 in terms of the agricultural sector's sudden, negative growth contribution, there's an underlying scenario where cost gets added, to the baseline given factors, such as load shedding. And over time that erodes profit margins and that results in less growth in the sector. So where we are now, just saw the retail sales numbers today as well, really still dismal. So the household sector is still under significant pressure. And, that will continue until we start to see a cut in interest rates and also see that our inflation rate moderates, to more sustainable lower levels. So household sector focused, I would say the retail side will still be under pressure. Likewise, if we look at the global economy and its contribution in terms of demand for our products, it's also a scenario where there's still a lot of risk. So I think our primary sectors will also still be quite under pressure. Now, talking here about the mining and manufacturing sectors that are quite dependent on global demand. But having said that, in combination, we could start to see in the second half of the year that the economy start to pick up a bit because, globally interest rates are at this point in time at a plateau level. We do forecast that international interest rates will start to be cut this year, and that will be a trigger, I think, on our side to also see monetary policy loosening.
Elize, and let's dig a little bit more into that global picture. While global economists and analysts do expect those interest rates to start dropping in the second half of the year, the global leaders at the World Economic Forum still expect moderate to weak growth in 2024. Perhaps talk us through then what's forcing the global economic narrative to remain largely underwhelming.
Yes, I think that's very much to do with the leads and lags of monetary policy on the one hand. If you think about how sharp the increases in interest rates were in many of those developed economies, that will still play out in economic data in the next 12 to 18 months. So it will be a diminishing impact if we do start to see cuts, but it will still be fairly high levels compared to what those economies were used to, especially over the COVID period, when interest rates were slashed to zero and negatives and where they are now. It is still a restrictive monetary policy stance in the developed economies. And, last year you'll recall that we actually expected that there might have been recession in the US and in some of the other developed countries, and it didn't quite play it out. And that could be given that, the lags that are involved has not quite given us that weak picture at the time. But some of that weakness could still filter through. And I actually also today saw that there's, a note or some research about debt levels that are quite high globally. We know that. And that repayments are also a matter that, more companies are falling behind on paying off their debt. So there's still definitely an overhang given the high interest rate scenario that's playing out in the global economy.
And Elize, before I let you go, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Those expectations that the economy would start making that turnaround perhaps in the second half of the year. Where can we expect some light?
Yes, I still do believe that, if you think about the number of projects, especially on renewable energy that is in the pipeline, we will start to see some of those that have been in the pipeline for the past 18 months or so coming, to conclusion and starting to add capacity to our grid. And if we can have lower levels of load shedding, that will definitely be a stimulus to the economy. We started to see a very, I would say, good positive correlation between lower levels of growth and slightly better economic growth. So let's hope that we can see some of those additional projects coming on stream.
Elize, thank you so much for your time. We'll have to leave it there for now. And of course, that's independent economist Elize Kruger.